This program is underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art. Carlos Furniture, a family-owned business, has been providing furniture, appliances, and household accessories since 1997. The flagship store on St. Croix and another on St. Thomas are both open for in-store shopping and are able to ship to various locations in the Caribbean.
and viewers like you. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Bookcase. I'm your host, Shawna Richards, a sometime writer and a longtime reader. I invite you to join me as we explore the bookcase and celebrate Virgin Islands authors and talent. Each week on the Bookcase, we'll introduce you to a local author and learn more about them and their work. A storyteller lives in each of us, and I'm so excited to give our homegrown storytellers a chance to tell their story. Tonight's selection from the Bookcase is Julianne, Queen of the Ruins, and I'm honored to welcome its author, Howard Jones. Howard, welcome to the Bookcase. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
And thank you for having me, definitely. It's an honor.
So you are a return guest to the Bookcase, having been here for season 1 with your first book, Ediphos, and today you're here talking about Julianne. So tell us about what you've been doing between Ediphos and Julianne.
Yeah, well, in between those times, honestly, there was a whole lot between, college and then eventually, the military and stuff like that. So, life was very much tossing all around the place up until then, But, Julianne is my most recent series I've been working on. I've been really, putting in a lot to it because, honestly, when I was in the military, this was how I kind of, kept myself sane over there. It made me think of home and stuff because I was never been off island for that long, So it really helped kept my head together.
So with Julianne, Queen of the Ruins is your third book. And what category of literature does it fall into?
Yeah, I normally put this as fantasy action adventure, just with a bit of an Afro-Caribbean twist to it.
Okay. And then where does the Afro-Caribbean twist come in?
Well, I would say it comes in the fact that, of course, obviously the story takes place on St. Thomas itself, just in a distant future. But also, too, it's many aspects of our Caribbean, and of course, the Caribbean folklore being diaspora of West African folklore, kind of weaves their way into just different aspects of the world and stuff like that.
What inspired this book?
Honestly, it's a tricky one. There's a lot of little things, but also it's very much its own thing. I just had this idea of how would things be if I was tiny, Found it so interesting, and eventually was doing artwork and stuff based around it. When I was still in high school, actually, at the same time I was doing Ediphos, I was thinking about Julianne. I just never had any concrete stuff with it, so I just never wrote it, but the idea was just floating around my mind for years and years still.
So you've had the idea of this character who is a teenager, a young woman?
Yeah, she's I have Julie as around 15 in the story, but I kind of always had the idea of this one character just kind of wandering around actually, and it was a big deal I had for her to be a young woman because when I decided to sit down and write the book, I was watching some video. I wish I could find it, but it was about this woman was showing a bookshelf. A woman or girl was showing a bookshelves, and it said, "Okay, find the books that have a female protagonist." And then they took all the books that didn't fit that criteria. Half the bookshelf goes. Then they said, have a female character that actually does stuff in the story. More of the bookshelf gone. Have a female character who has, what's the word? They actually just, do stuff basically, make their own choices of their own free will. Like by the time they were done, the bookshelf was empty.
So you were very intentional in writing a book with a strong female, a strong woman character.
Yeah, but also too very much like in its own way. Like I didn't want her to just, because there's different ideas people have about a strong woman. Sometimes it could get a little stereotypical. So I just wanted to make something that's like her, but not like, I'm not best to put that one. But yeah, that's just the whole thing. I wanted a female character that just does stuff, basically. Because a lot of people don't have those.
So without giving anything away, what is some of the stuff that Julianne does? Because when we meet her, when we're introduced to her, she's just your average 15-year-old living her life in a world that is in our distant future. And then, so what are some of the things that she does?
Well, I mean, I guess from the jump of the story, you could kind of see that she's very much like active and doesn't really take anyone's crap, I guess you'd say.
Okay.
Whereas, the village men are like trying to deal with that iguana trying to eat like their fruit. And everyone's scared, but she's willing to kind of just hop out there and like chase it off, And she's very much.
But this isn't a normal iguana.
Oh, no, it's, yeah, just for context, I guess, for the audience in that sense to know. All the characters are basically about like maybe this big, they're really tiny. Like I call them inchlings for that reason, So to them, an iguana isn't some like nuisance that you could swat away with your leg, it's like a dinosaur walking around.
Right.
But at the same time, they're kind of like used to it in certain areas, same as we kind of get used to them eventually, most of us. But, she very much is a person that just likes to get stuff done because she's in a village that gathers, fruits and that kind of stuff year round. So her and many of the other women very much have to be active and work hard like anyone else in the village. But she's always kind of had that angle of if the stuff needs to get done, do it. If someone needs help, help them,
So what will the reader of Julianne, will they see their community in it? Will they see themselves in the story?
Yeah, that honestly was the hope for it. The whole thing of it is that it's supposed to kind of be reflective of St. Thomas, but also different. Like, because obviously most of us aren't 4 inches tall.
Right.
So, that dramatically changes things. But also, too, Julianne sometimes, because she's a young woman, because she's young, gets underestimated or looked down upon, There's crime and there's struggle in her society, kind of sometimes same as ours, There's issues that need to be dealt with, And I would say that's kind of very similar to us, and what we have to deal with, Just in our culture, good and bad. They've kind of adopted it, as in, if we are like diaspora of West Africa,
right,
then the instincts are diaspora of us.
What inspired you to write about a society where people are 4 inches tall? What triggered your imagination? Because that's amazing.
No, honestly, I would say specifically, there was another series a game series I played actually, and this isn't much like a society thing. It was specifically one character. She was also an inchling in that story, about yay tall, like about that 4-inch mark. And I find it interesting because she was the antagonist in the story, but when you fight her, as like when your character goes to go face her, she's like fighting you with all she's got because in her mind, and she got tricked, but in her mind, she was the hero who was facing off these giants, which is you, to protect her people, And I just found it so interesting. Like that was just so interesting because it's like when her music kicks in and everything like that in the middle of the boss battle, and you're listening to it, just be like, I don't sound like I'm the hero in this situation. It sounds like you're the hero, But that's a different kind of courage, to fight a giant, like the David and Goliath thing is already,
Right.
Something else. That's courage beyond courage. Now imagine if Goliath could shoot laser beams,
And David and Goliath is certainly, a well-established theme in literature. There's always, the little man going up against a more powerful force. So when you were writing Julianne, did you have that theme of David and Goliath in your head?
I would say that'd be a big thing because Julie is, I mean, of course, all of them are small. They're just like interesting, but it's like she's still very much small compared to the gigantic threats she faces sometimes, you know? And I feel like that so much better highlights her courage and, you know, her bravery when she can like face these threats in the eye, you know, be it, you know, some giant creature, some like powerful bandit, some strong king or something like that, you know, she kind of looks them in the eye and says, right is right, wrong is wrong.
So despite her height, she can stand up for herself and take on other powerful forces. So you've written, this is your third book, and you seem to have found a niche in fantasy and world building. What is the most challenging part about world building?
I mean, honestly, I think the hardest part with world building is just knowing how much minute, like, individual things can affect your world. Like, honestly, like, just on the idea of, like, whether this world would have magic or not was a decision that took me, like, months because that would, like, dramatically alter how I have to structure a story, structure characters, structure everything, you know? So just even small details I have to, like, be super confident in and, you know, super sure of myself in because it's like they affect everything. So world building is always never about the big stuff, you know? It's usually about the small stuff, like just something as simple as what if rain was a different kind of, what if rain wasn't water? Dramatically affects every aspect of your world, even though you just change one thing, you know? So world building is, yeah.
So I asked you about the challenge. So what's the easiest thing about world building?
I guess the easiest thing about it in the sense is that I feel like it simplifies it if I say I make my own rules, but in a sense, I kind of make my own rules. Of course, I still have to follow those rules, which is the challenging part. But if my world has magic, my world has magic, you know? But also, too, a big part of it is because I have passion with that. I love devising and reading about history, cultures, and stuff like that. So much less making it myself, you know, it's just interesting to me.
So is that one of your rules? You mentioned rules. What are some of the rules that you follow? And do they change for every book?
I mean, I guess it changes on the story, of course, you know, but, you know, there's like lots of little rules. Like in their world, of course, for example, like the power system I mentioned, they do have essentially what is like functionally magic. For them, they know it as sacred power. And sacred power is something that you can tap into in different ways. And those different ways that you tap into it are called the paths. So there's always multiple different paths of power that people can choose. So some people, like a warrior, will train their body to its limit and then break past that limit. That's considered a physical path, you know? And at first it's just seeming, it doesn't look like magic, it's just you getting strong and muscly. But after a while, when you push past that limit, it becomes you having skin as hard as iron, you know? You can jump super high, go super fast, you know?
So when you were growing up, with all these fantastic ideas in your head, did you start writing from an early age, or is that something that came to you later?
Yeah, I actually started writing, I feel, like stories. Well, I used to draw them first. And then I got to kindergarten where they taught us how to write. And honestly, I feel like that has to be a blessing from God in that. I can remember it exactly. I could remember when my teacher was teaching me how to form my hand. I feel bad because like she was left-handed, so people see me write screw up because my hand is. I write right-handed like I'm left-handed, but still, when I formed those letters, it's just something clicked. It made sense, and I immediately started writing stories.
Okay.
Like just as I learned the alphabet and how to sound out words, I just started adding words to my little drawings and picture books and stuff.
So you say you were drawing from an early age in addition to writing. Did you do your own illustrations for your book?
Yeah, no, I didn't. My art did not level up at the same pace as my writing. So I had a artist I found on Fiverr, and I commissioned them to do the book covers. I spent a long time with like a bunch, like dozens of tabs open, just finding the specific artist who could just draw black people. That was it. That was a challenge.
That was a requirement.
That was a guaranteed. And I didn't notice until like after the fact, but the artist for my books actually does stuff for Black Sands Entertainment, which is a black comic group.
Okay.
I didn't learn this until like I was probably like the second cover in, so I was like, makes sense why a guy from Vietnam.
But
is
when
so good at
when
that.
I saw the cover, of your book, just the imagery and how Julianne is drawn immediately made me think of anime. So now you made that connection. You made that connection for me. So when you are writing, which audience are you writing for? Who do you want Julianne, Queen of the Ruins, to appeal to?
Well, with Julianne specifically, I kind of was going. I always kind of tell people, like, I think the closest interaction I have with comparison would be Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you could show this to kids, and it's a cool show, but at the same time you could like show this to adults, and they'll be seeing it and being like understanding like the deeper themes and the deeper messages behind
Right.
some of it, like, because it was showing on Nickelodeon and it was like kids mainly watching it, but me growing up having watched it, I was just there like, oh gosh, this was about PTSD, this was about like aspects of war and protest, and these are normally not kids topics, but that's what allegory is for,
But I think it's all in how it's packaged.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And that's kind of what I wanted to go for with Julianne, is like I want something that kids could read and enjoy, but also adults and just anyone in our community could kind of read it and kind of be like, oh, they're talking about that topic in our community.
Right.
Personally, so it's like, it's meant to kind of hit all those different layers, It's not too childish that adult can't read it, but not too like intense that kids won't be able to understand it at like some level,
So you have now written 3 books, all of which are in the fantasy realm. Do you also read the type of books that you like to write?
Yeah, that's a very ironic twist because I usually don't write a lot of, I don't read a lot of fantasy. I've more read sci-fi lately. I've been reading a lot of Dune from Frank Herbert. But even in the past, I read a lot of stuff like Sharon Draper's books, like Copper Sun or the Ziggy books, which are just very much like regular, just fun. Well, Copper Sun wasn't a fun fiction book, but it was a fiction book. I mean, Copper Sun was about slavery and all that kind of stuff, which I think had a low-key, effect on me when it came to that. It's obviously Julianne's not as graphic, but now I'm thinking about it. Copper Sun had a very strong female lead, but like, not like let's see it. She was a strong female lead, but not strong in a sense of she was out and proud and stuff like that, but because she was a very tough, enduring survivor, of the transatlantic slave trade, the worst of it,
So what can you tell me about your writing process? Are you the paper and pad? Are you sit down before the computer? What helps you get the words out of your head and onto the page?
Yeah. Well, it's just mainly I just do go to the computer one time, but, so it's very simple. Just open up Word, sometimes get my notes together and then spend, the whole 30 minutes or more just on YouTube trying to find the correct song playlist for it.
So what music do you write to?
Honestly, like all that just changes depending on what I'm writing. Like if it has to be like a romantic scene or like an action scene or, even like the kind of action scene, like it just has to be like, I just have to just get the right vibe. And there's, it could just be like so specific sometimes, but it's like, I just need to get like that specific vibe and I can kind of write from there.
So what music, do you remember what kind of music you were listening to when writing Julianne?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like by and large, just like some like really kind of relaxing EDM for like, whenever it's like a part where she's kind of like in country, I used to use like a lot of like relaxing like EDM type music or like other types of relaxing music because, when I was growing up, maybe it was like my spot to relax, so it was like, when I want to conjure back that feeling, I try to like listen to like some relaxed music and stuff like that because that's how I get that vibe. But maybe I might listen to like something more fast-paced like rock or like just something else if it's like a action scene or something like intense, So all that depends.
Do you have a favorite passage in your book that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably just throw a part here that I think I've always kind of was nervous about doing passages because I always felt like it was so high context. I feel like reading any part of it wouldn't make no sense by itself.
Okay.
But I could just read a small piece here.
Okay. And if you need to give a little context to our audience so that they understand what precedes or the bigger story that this is happening in.
Yeah. Well, okay, so for this part, it was them, Julie and Obi, which is a friend she met along the way, who's like basically like a knight. They're trying to, rescue a friend of theirs who got kidnapped by a bandit, So now they're trying to find like a way to get there quickly. So, yeah, I can say from here. All right. To leave from the bottom of Cassie Pass, you had several options. Most sensible people would go up the winding roads until they reached the top. The other option was to pass over the hill through a large gut. It was faster, but obviously less sensible and more dangerous than the previous path. Julie, however, was not sensible. The gut was small compared to many others, with a small trickle passing through the rocky path down the hill. The path was rather steep, with only a small space besides the rocks which you could possibly walk or ride on shifting dirt. Obi could not help but looking down into the gut and pray endlessly that the mouse he was on would not slip. They're small, so they ride mice instead of like horses and stuff. Obi, come on, she called, riding much faster. This isn't safe, Julie, he replied. Sissy, you is a crazy person, he snapped back. He looked at the slowly creeping mouse and gently whipped the lead. It began to dash up the pass to his horror. The top of the hill was much more merciful, and they walked through the tall bush and across ruined roads. It was afternoon now, and even the mice were getting tired. So, just kind of like want to kind of highlight the character. Obi's, despite being a knight, he's very much a coward. He will run from a fight.
But
even
still,
when
he says that Julianne isn't sensible.
Yeah, because Julie will take, she's willing to take more risks when need be. She's not like needlessly reckless, but, if she has to take some risks to save the day, she's going to easily take the risk, versus him, he typically runs from danger. Julie will run towards it if need be, which is like the big, and it kind of creates like an interesting dynamic where, Obi is a trained knight, like he's incredibly skilled fighter, been training from birth, but he constantly is inspired by Julie because she doesn't have that training, those skills, and yet she's the one that kind of leaps headfirst into danger while he's kind of like,
comes naturally to her.
So it's like he himself, who's like such a powerful knight, and even then he's like an actual, like, he's much older than Julie, he's an adult. He still kind of gets inspired by her too to say like, Julie never learned to sword fight. She never learned to ride in battle. She never trained alongside like, chiefs and knights, but yet she fights and I don't, so it propels him to do better,
So in this story, when we're first introduced to Julianne, like I said, she's a teenager living her life. And so does the reader of Julianne walk along with her as she becomes the queen?
Yeah, that's a vibe I kind of go for. I always like that, I guess that kind of build up where you have a character go from their humble beginnings to, becoming like, a hero, or becoming whatever, being a villain if need be, just taking that that journey. And that's kind of why I wanted to go with this one. You are going to like follow Julie through the good times, through the bad, through her defeats, through her victories. And it's going to like, very much affect how you view the world when you kind of have the story through her side. There'll be other perspectives on other characters, of course, throughout the times, but, that's who I really plan to stick with for most of this book. But of course, later on, there'll be some others,
Okay.
St. Croix still has to get their story.
For the person out there who is listening to you and who thinks that they may also have a story to tell, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say biggest advice, and I've gotten a few people like, who kind of come to me with that same stuff. I just tell them to just write. Don't worry about judgment. Don't worry about quality. Don't worry about nothing, because comparison is a thief of joy. And, and the thing is too, another thing is to never feel like your story isn't unique. I could give 10 people the prompt that there's a knight, he has to go rescue a princess from the dragon, I will get 10 completely different stories.
And write a mouse.
Yeah, basically, it's like I can give you, like I said, I can give somebody, like some of the Japanese games I've played, they take that same exact prompt, or you're a hero who has to slay a dragon. By the time you're done, the dragon's not the actual end of the game, so people will always, people's own soul, I guess you'd say, their own life and everything that will affect everything, and every aspect of you that makes you a unique person is going to make that story unique just the same. So don't worry about, Lord of the Rings did this. You can't do Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings couldn't do what you do. Just write, just do it.
But so many times we hear writers being told, write what you know. Does that apply to fantasy and world building?
I would say still honestly, because with Ediforce, I feel like I wrote Ediforce well, but there's certain stuff in the story itself that I probably couldn't really get as accurately as someone else. Like, there's characters who are like living in areas that are like gray and snowy, and these are not fantastical snuff. There's snow in real life, but I've never seen it, so it's like I could try my best to describe it, but I don't really know what snow is actually like, Versus when it came to Julianne, it's like they speak in our like local dialect. They so culturally similar to us, and plus the things that are there that they're describing is stuff I see and most of us see every day, So it was very liberating writing specifically from what you know. But you can still.
And what I found even though you created this whole world, what I found was when in reading Julianne, when it was very grounding to read the characters speaking in dialect, to hear them say, you, and, all of that. And that was very grounding. And even though you've created this world of inchlings and giant iguanas and all of these fantastical things, that immediately placed me in St. Thomas. And I said, I know where I am. Was it hard for you to write in dialect?
There is some difficulties in, compromising between spelling and capturing what I'm trying to capture. So it's like a little tricky figuring out like, how do I spell this? And then even then there's some local words where I'm like, say it my whole life and I don't be like, I'm like, how do you spell Jack Spaniel? Like, what the hell? It's like, so there was some challenges there in trying to figure out some stuff, but by and large, it's always been something so freeing when I write from like a context I completely understand.
So now you have 3 books under your belt. You started with Ediforce, you have Julianne, Queen of the Ruins. What is next for you?
Well, right now I actually have the next book for Julianne, which is, Julianne and the Sacred Treasures. I could kind of put it out now, basically. Essentially done. I'm just waiting on a few small details, and once that's done, it's going to be out. And I'm already working on the 3rd book, which will be, Julianne and the Sisterhood. It's the name so far. So I don't really plan to stop. I'm still actively world building, actively putting in work to like get this stuff out.
Amazing, amazing. It's been a pleasure to learn more about our local talent, Howard Jones. For more information on Julianne, Queen of the Ruins, or any of the books featured on this program, visit our website at www.wtjx.org. We appreciate your support of our local authors, and we'll see you next week when we take another book from the Bookcase.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters. This program was underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art
and viewers like you.